Okay, well, whenever Dr. Long asked me to do this, I had no idea what I was going to do, so we'll kind of wing it a little bit. The first thing I wanted to cover was the transformational leadership aspect. I did do my integrated research review on transformational leadership. Had the poster presentation and all that. One of the Bible verses that I found that kind of describes transformational leadership is this 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always preserves. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of a transformational aspect from the Bible. A transformational leader is one that is down there in the trenches with their troops. I mean, they are working side by side and conquering problems, giving everybody in the group ownership into the problem that's at hand. Okay. Here is the actual poster that I presented. The one thing that got me whenever I did all the research on this is the low level of actual research that was out there for transformational leadership in nursing. Transformational leadership is recommended by the ANCC for magnet programs. I'm sure we all know that by now. But the major aspects that I did find that come with transformational leadership in nursing, not only does it improve employee satisfaction, but it improves recruitment, retention, and greater employee competencies. And that means if you're happy where you work, you're going to work better. So that's where that all falls into place. So I did present in Spokane, Washington at the Western Institute of Nursing's research conference. It was I love Spokane. The weather up there is great. It's wet all the time. This over here, that big tall building in the back is the hotel where the actual conference was. So I had to walk 3 city blocks every morning to get to the conference and back. And one morning it was snowing, so it was just great. My kind of weather, foggy all the time, wet, thunderstorms every day. Some of the historic architecture is out there. This bottom one here is a park that I walk through every day at lunch. It was called Monuments Park, and I think I've got, yeah. This and the big wagon were all in this Monuments Park, so I thought that was interesting. Now, the reason I got to present at the Western Institute was because Covenant is a part of Providence St. Joseph Health, which is a big corporate healthcare system in the West. My poster was presented to them for possibly being shown at this conference. We submitted like 12 posters from Covenant. 3 of them were selected. Mine was one of them. Providence Health only had 12 slots in the whole conference. There was 4 4-hour viewings of posters and 106 posters at each viewing. So it was a pretty massive conference. The whole aspect of the conference was most of the presenters there for the conference talks and the posters were all doctoral students. This was one of the things they had to do to finish their doctorate degree. So here I was with my master's, not even my master's yet. I was still, I was trying to finish this is part of my capstone for my master's. And here are all these doctorate students. I got to network with a lot of them. It was pretty interesting. There were a lot of people there. And this one is of Sacred Heart Hospital, which is one of the larger hospitals in the Providence group. It just happened to be up on the hill, and I passed by it every day while I was walking. So the title of the conference was Transforming Health Through Advances in Nursing Research and Practice and Education. A lot of good keynote speakers. There was a keynote speaker every morning, but the rest of them were, the rest of the presentations were all grouped. Like I said, they were doctoral students. They'd all have 10-minute presentations that they were all grouped together. So every presentation time was an hour, and they had to do their 10-minute presentation, and all of them were basically on the same subject that were in each little cluster. And they covered everything from use of marijuana in healthcare and night shift work, anything from natural disasters. They have a lot of fires out there that they were covering. So here I am, in all my glory, presenting my poster. Like I said, Covenant had 3 posters there. Well, there was a little miscommunication somewhere. The other 2 posters didn't get there. So I was standing there by myself with 2 blank spots on either side of me. And I think it's different whenever you go to a poster presentation with a group than going by yourself, because I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I mean, I would stand there by my poster, and anytime anybody would ask me a question, I'd answer it. But I don't know if I was supposed to, you know. I know the people that were judging came by, and they didn't ask me any questions. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I don't know if I was supposed to ask them questions because I had never done this before, so it was pretty interesting. And here's the great hall. Like I said, there was 106 posters during each presentation, so there was a lot of posters up. And of course, it fulfilled my MSN program outcome number 6, to communicate local, state, and regional, national, and global level with professionals while working in collaborative and interdisciplinary relationships. So that was, now what's next is I had hoped, actually whenever I was at that conference, I was talking to the head of research for Providence. Her name was Beth Schnick, something like that. And we had talked about doing a Providence St. Joseph Health-wide transformational leadership survey and doing a more in-depth research article and publishing it, possibly. It's a long, drawn-out process because you have to get permission from each of the hospitals before you can do the survey. So, and I was thinking about doing that for my doctorate program, but DNP wants you to use research that's already out there. PhD wants you to do the new research. I was going after the DNP, so it didn't work out that way. It's still a project that might happen in the future. The other thing that crossed my mind while I was doing all this, I mean, my whole master's, the whole time I was doing my master's, everything I did corresponded with transformational leadership. No matter what the class was, I had some input of transformational leadership in every class. So I was thinking, we stole transformational leadership from the business world. Why don't we develop our own leadership style and call it nursing leadership? I mean, you know, because business is more business oriented, where nursing is patient oriented. We need to develop our leadership around patient care and not around a business. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about in the future sometime. I don't know when, but we'll see. Any questions? That's about all I got.
I have a question for you, Larry.
Uh-huh.
So what you've learned from your experience as a transformational leader and then the research that you did, how do you apply that to your work? When you come up against a situation where you must be a strong leader, how does that look?
In my current position, it's more like leadership by example. So the biggest part of my job right now is complaints. I take care of any complaint, and they come up all the time. So I try to teach nurses how to deal with complaints as they come up. And if the nurse is the one that caused the complaint, that's a different story. I try to teach the charge nurse how to deal with the complaint and then try to talk to the nurse. And I mean, we're not here to cause problems. We're here to help. So I know family members can be taxing sometimes, but you can't lose your cool. That's the main thing about it.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll ask Dr. Delaney to come.
I've got just one question.
Excuse me, Dr.
No, I was just going to say, could you tell the group, some have done the integrative review, but can you just, for those that haven't, can you just walk us through how that's different from just a little old, plain old literature search, and how that then fit the category of research for this?
The way that I did my integrated review was, okay, the ANCC has a book on transformational leadership. I mean, it's a small pamphlet, really, but I got that, and I started as that as the like the golden rule for my research. Any research that I did had to have the same definition of transformational leadership in it that the ANCC did. So if they did not include the definition or a definition, I mean, you wouldn't believe how many articles are out there that say, we decided to be transformational leaders because that's what the ANCC wants for Magnet. That doesn't work. You can't just decide to be a transformational leader. It's a process. So any of the literature that I came across that did not include the same definition was excluded. So I think I started out with like 54 articles and narrowed it down to 14 just by that means alone. None of it was really like a systemic review or anything. It was just mostly professional opinions and stuff like that. I mean, but it still weighed pretty heavy because they use the same definition. So that's where I narrowed my process down, and then combining all of those 14 articles together got the integrated review. Mm-hmm.
You can stay up here. I said, you can stay up here. So thank you for letting me come. I had Larry in my leadership class, and I think when he started out, he didn't really want to be in class. I'm not exactly sure. Is that true or not?
Actually, I came back to school on a bet.
Okay.
So
we can kind of tell when students start out if they really want to be there or not. And we saw, most of us in the program saw a complete transformation with Larry, and so I just want to say that we're very proud of you for
Thanks.
where you've come, where you've been, and where you're coming, where you're going with this. So just kind of what I wanted to talk is just a little bit about transformational leadership. And so you mentioned nurse retention, and as we all know, that's a huge issue right now, just in nursing period, just keeping nurses. How are we going to keep nurses? How are we going to keep millennials? The baby boomers are all going to be leaving. We're losing nurses, and it's always been a problem with the nursing shortage, but how are we going to keep our nurses? And so we know it's a problem, and research does show that leadership has a huge, it has a huge part on how we're going to keep our nurses. And so the literature also does show that transformational leadership is a way, and he showed a slide that showed that is an effective leadership style that has shown a way that we can keep our nurses. And so we know that it's very, very expensive to hire a new nurse, and then they're leaving, and those statistics are changing depending on what article you look at. Those are all different, but some of them are saying within 2 years, new nurses are leaving, like 50 to 60% within 2 years, they're leaving the profession. So it's a huge issue, and $40,000 to $60,000 to train a new nurse, and then they're leaving. And not only is it financially a problem, but it just negatively affects the unit in general. When we lose a nurse, it's frustrating, the morale, just, you guys know. I mean, everybody in here knows what a problem it is. So nursing in, Dr. Long talks about, she comes to my class and talks about how leadership style has changed over the years, the historical, and how it's gone from this and transformed and gone from autocratic and all the way through, and how we're kind of come to a point in nursing, because we know that nursing has changed, and now nursing is changing, and there's a lot of change that goes on in nursing, so leadership needs to be different. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about, what does transformational leadership mean? What kind of leadership style does that? And so there's a ton, we could talk for a long time about that. But I'm going to do kind of what our preacher does in church, which, Dr. Wilkinson, you can tell me if you used to do this, but I'm going to bring up three points that I like about transformational leadership. So, is that what they do?
Yeah, it's probably the same way.
Okay. The first thing is the ability to bring about change, okay, which we said is so important in nursing today. So, who likes change? I mean, who loves change? Who finds that there's a lot of resistance to change? And so, for leaders, that's tough, to get people on board with change. So a transformational leader is somebody that has the ability to inspire followers to be on board with change, and it's not easy to do. So here's what we use in our leadership class. We use a book by Daft, and I like in Daft, here's what Daft says. I like this sentence. Transformational leadership paints a grand vision of a desired future and communicates it in a way that makes the pain of change worth the effort. Okay, so has anybody ever felt the pain of change? I just really liked that sentence because, man, I have felt the pain of change. Okay, so a transformational leader is able to paint this grand vision that is able to have this desired future and communicates it in a way that makes that pain worth the effort. So it doesn't mean we're not going to feel the pain. All right, it doesn't mean that we're gonna paint it to where we're not feeling the pain, but we're going to see it to where it's going to be worth the effort that we're going to go through. Okay, so I really like that. That was point number one. Okay, point number two is that transformational leaders can inspire followers to go beyond their self-interest for the good of the group. Okay, are you with me? And here's the key, without them sometimes even realizing that they're doing it, which is kind of nice, that we're so motivated and empowered that we don't even realize that we're doing things for other people or we're doing things for the good of the rest of the people. We're not even realize that we're doing that. We can motivate, those type of leaders can motivate them to do more than they were originally expected to do. And we can make them aware of the importance of change and enable them to look beyond their own immediate interests for the sake of the whole organization, and just make them want to do more than the status quo. Okay, so we all know mediocrity, you know. I just want to go just do my job and just, do my check. Vern, you're laughing. I know we don't know anybody like that, okay? We don't want to go beyond what is just in our job description, okay? And some days I feel like that too, all right? But a transformational leader can just motivate people just to want to do more, okay? Just because it's the right thing to do and it's going to better our organization. And without us really even knowing why or that we want to do that, okay? So we can motivate people to be that better person, all right? And they just have that ability to do that. And a lot of it is by leading by example, like Larry said, okay? Just by the way he's acting and the way they're doing that, we want to be like that, okay? And so that's an ability that it just makes a really great leader. And then number 3, and I think Larry's a good testament to this just by where he's come and where he's going there, is that transformational leaders develop followers into leaders. That's like my favorite one, is just that, we're all followers, okay, and we're all leaders because we're nurses. If we're all nurses in here, okay? So we're all followers and we're all leaders, but transformational leaders just develop followers into better leaders, okay? I just love that one, and I feel that that's a true transformational leader. So that's kind of the way I feel about a real transformational leader, and I feel like that's kind of where I see where
right.
you've come, where you started and where you've come, and just thank you for all of that you've done. So that's kind of all that I have. And what? All right. Okay. Any other questions from you guys on?
I want to say thank you both. That was fantastic, and I think it's really interesting what you shared, that the head of research of Providence, which Providence is a big place, is Dr. Shinek, I guess.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right.
Yeah, I
But-
can't say her name right either. It's Beth.
Beth, yeah, but Beth, when she looked at your poster, and I want to encourage everybody that's in the audience, because what you will learn to do as you progress through the program is you'll learn to apply the rigor and reproducibility of research to how you search the literature. And that's what Larry did, and he alluded to it when he talked about what he excluded. But that process caught her eye. She looked at that and said, we ought to do a national survey. His findings, the conclusion from his poster, led somebody that's over a very large system to say, why don't we do a national survey? Because he identified we didn't know enough yet. And as you said, we know leadership when we see it, but it's hard to pin down.
Right.
And so the fact that this individual, when she looked at your poster, said, let's do this, is when somebody tells you that and you're presenting your poster, that's really good. That means that they see you've identified a very important gap. And so what you're learning to do here will set you up to do work that could be repeated, reproduced, or built upon. And that's very important that this individual noticed that, and you're to be commended for your good work.
Okay.
I think we did have one question.
I was just curious, you said that you, whenever you were doing your research, you excluded anything that didn't have the same definition of what transformational leadership was. What was that definition?
It was, right off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Is it on
But-
your poster? Could we go back to your poster?
I don't know if you could see it on the poster or
Can you
not.
make that bigger? I was gonna actually suggest that. Derek, can you make that bigger, just enlarge that so everybody can actually see the rigorous process followed?
Oops. No.
You can right click and show.
Get up there, bring that so loud.
Come on.
Our IT person, our IT
Yeah,
person.
and just end your show. It's the very last one.
Where are you?
It would probably be over here, right here, the second pinpoint.
There you go. And then there's a cursor lower right hand side and just enlarge it all the way.
There we go. And then, current slide.
Let me get it as big as we can, and we'll go to the curve. No, it's gonna.
Okay. If you go back over the other way and I get my glasses, I can probably read it. Right here.
Is this it right here?
That's it.
The American Nurses Credentialing Center defines transformational leaders are those who stimulate and inspire followers not only to achieve extraordinary outcomes, but in the process develop the followers' own leadership capacity. They help followers develop and grow into leaders by responding to their individual needs and empowering them by aligning objectives and goals to the benefit of the follower, the leader, the group, and the organization.
There you go. That's why I couldn't remember it, because it's a lot. Yeah. And each one of the articles had to have at least the first sentence of that as the definition. I mean, they had to define transformational leadership for me. They can't just say, we're transformational leaders.
Words like empower, motivate, inspire, I can see some of those in here in your. All right.
Anything else?
I have one more question. When you did your IRR, did you only search in nursing journals or did you use other disciplines also?
I thought about going through business journals, but I decided I wanted to keep it in nursing specifically. So that, yes, it was basically in healthcare nursing journals that I found my articles in. Because I know there's probably a lot more out there business oriented, but transformational leadership started in business in the late 70s. And then in the late 80s, we had transformational leadership being used in Enron and MCI WorldCom, which went defunct because of some of their business practices. So transformational leadership was rebuilt, and they put in an ethical bias in it where you're ethically bound to your company. That's where authentic leadership came about. It's basically almost the same thing, but I feel like transformational leadership is still used in nursing because our bias, ethical bias, is more towards patients than it is the business end. So I think that's the reason they still use the terminology transformational leadership for nursing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you plan to use this as one of your transformational leadership stories for your mega journey? I'm not sure which one it fit, but it sounds very close to one that you could use in your journey.
You know, nobody's approached me about that yet. I know Covenant's going through the magnet journey, but me working nights, I'm kind of like left out there. So I've been to a couple of the meetings because I went to some of those for my actual capstone, And that's about
We'll
as
see.
far as it's gone.
Look into it, 'cause I bet you can help your organization in that journey with this going with one of the topics for the TL section in the Magna journey. Because they look for things like this. These are some of
I'm
the stories that
sure
we
it would
used.
help. I'm sure it would.
It'd work good.
Before we disperse, I'd like to make an announcement for next month. And if everyone wants to look at Vivi, she'll have a part in
That's right.
telling about her experience in Australia, presenting her poster there and her research. So please join us then. I think you'll be very interested and you'll learn a lot about the process that you go through during your master's degree or IRR. So that will be October 25th, the same time from 4:30 to 5:30. And then mark your calendars, it's not far after, but there's a November 2nd brown bag as well. So we'd love to see you all then. And one more reminder, don't forget about the picnic. Thank you.